All right, guys. We are back. Thanks again for showing up today. And as you know, we are always trying to put you in a position to succeed, right? A position of tactical advantage. Well, you've been hearing my beautiful voice for the last little while, and I haven't had a guest on for a while. I thought it'd be good to go find one. Well, I actually stumbled across our next guest here on LinkedIn of all places. By the way, if you're not on LinkedIn, you should probably get on there if you're a
Yep.
businessman or a woman. So I stumbled across him and was immediately drawn to his story. Why? Because it's completely different from mine. So our guest today is Nathan Hirsch. Nathan is a 30-year-old entrepreneur. Now, the coolest part, and we talked about this prior, is he's never held a quote unquote job, which I think is awesome. So he's been an entrepreneur for 10 years, and he's an expert in something that a lot of people struggle with, and that is remote hiring and e-commerce. So he started his first e-commerce business out of college, and not just like, hey, here's this cool tech startup incubator. Oh no, he was the tech startup that starts in their dorm room, right? So Nathan
Right.
started in his dorm room and eventually grew it to you sold it for $30 million. Is that correct?
No, I didn't sell it. I've
Oh,
sold over $30 million. I
there you
sold
go.
over 25 million on Amazon. With free up, we're probably sold over 15 million. So the number's higher than 30. But in my LinkedIn profile, it says I've sold over $30 million online.
There you go. $30 million in sales online. So he's going to be somebody that you want to listen to. He is the co-founder and CEO of freeup.com. And FreeUp has an extra E in it in case you're looking for it. It's FREEEUP.com. And it's a marketplace that connects businesses with pre-vetted VAs, virtual assistants, freelancers, and agencies in e-commerce, digital marketing, and much more. Now, he is no rookie to the game. He regularly appears on leading podcasts such as Entrepreneur on Fire and speaks at live events about online hiring tactics. Without further ado, I present to you Nathan Hirsch.
How's it going? I'm excited to be here. I love talking about entrepreneurship, talking about hiring, and yeah, I'm an open book. So this should be fun.
I love it. I love it. Well, one of the biggest issues that businesses face, and I know this obviously facing it myself, and I'm sure you have as well, is how do you find the right people to help you out, right? And so I love this idea that you came up with, but I want to go back. Everybody has a backstory, and I want to kind of hear yours. And I want you to share with the audience. How is it that you came across this idea of starting a business where I'm going to vet these VAs and these assistants and freelancers and agencies for you, so you're not doing what I did, which is spend thousands of dollars on the wrong person?
Yeah, so I mentioned before that I never had a real job after college. Now, before college, my parents were teachers, and growing up, they always made me have these summer jobs to just teach me a lot about real life, which it did. So I was an internship at the Aaron's Corporation. I worked at a meat store. I was an umpire in my town, and then my biggest internship was at the Firestone Corporation. So my parents made me work those 40 hours a week. I learned a ton about sales, about customer service, about just working with people, managing people. And I also learned how much I just hated working for other people. And
Hmm.
when I got to college, I kind of looked at it as a ticking clock. I had 4 years to start my own business, or I was going to go into the real world and work for someone else and be miserable and probably never get out. So I started hustling, and I created this little textbook business. I used my summer money to buy people's books at the end of the semester. And then I would hold on to them in my car and then sell them at the beginning of next semester and make a profit. And the school bookstore made so much money that just to make a little less than them, just cut them out of the picture completely. And before I knew it, there were lines out the door of people wanting to sell me their books, to the point where I got a cease and desist letter from my college telling me to knock it off because I was
Oh,
stealing
no
too much.
way.
So my parents were both teachers. Me getting kicked out of school would not have gone over well. So I quickly pivoted from books. And this was back in 2008, 2009. Amazon was just bursting onto the scene. No one really knew what Amazon was. It was kind of this big bookstore that was just getting into other products. And there were no courses, there were no gurus. No one knew what being an Amazon seller was. And I thought it was so cool. I could have this 24/7 storefront And I just had to figure out what to sell besides books. So I started experimenting with stuff I was familiar with: video games, computers, sporting equipment, typical college guy stuff. And I just failed over and over and over. The only thing I could get to sell were these books. And it wasn't until I branched out of my comfort zone through trial and error that I came across the baby product industry. And that business took off. So if you can imagine me as a 20-year-old single college guy with more hair selling baby products on Amazon, that was me. And it was a wild time. No one really knew anything about Amazon. Like I said, I got in at a good time, and there was no software. There were no gurus. It was all figuring out what this big Amazon animal was. And it was a lot of opportunity. So I'm making more money than I ever had in my life. I'm making more than my parents at that point. And my parents tell me, hey, you should probably pay taxes. So I meet with an accountant, and the first question he asked me is, when are you going to hire your first person? And I kind of shrugged him off. Like, why would I do that? That's money out of my pocket. They're going to steal my ideas, hurt my business. Pretty standard entrepreneurial stuff, right? And he just laughed in my face, and he said, you're going to learn this lesson on your own. Well, sure enough, my first busy season comes around, the fourth quarter. I'm not prepared. I'm doing everything myself. Again, there's no Amazon software, so everything is getting done manually. And I just get destroyed. I'm working 20 hours a day. My social life plummets. My grades go down. And I work my butt off to just keep this business alive and make it to the other side. And when I do, I think to myself, man, I can never let that happen again. I need to start hiring people. So I post a job on Facebook. This guy in my business law class applies. He says, I don't know what you do. I need a job. I say, you're hired. I don't even interview him. Ends up being this amazing hire. He's my business partner today. He's hardworking. He's smart. His name's Connor Gillivan. He's minority owner of FreeUp. And so there I am as this 20-year-old punk kid thinking, man, this hiring thing is easy. You post a job on Facebook. Someone shows up. You make more money. And I just proceed to make bad hire after bad hire after bad hire, quickly giving up hiring people in person. No one took me seriously as a 20, 21-year-old. And I moved to the remote hiring world, the Upworks, the Fivers, and hired some pretty good people, learned a lot about virtual hiring, but I always wanted something faster, something where I didn't have to browse through 50 applicants, something where I could put in a request and get matched up quickly and get started today, not wait 2 weeks to get started on a project, and have protection where if someone quit, I would get money back to cover that next person along with better support, and I can go on. And I kept looking and looking, and when I couldn't find it, I said, you know what, I'll build it myself. And that's really when the idea of FreeUp came about. So that's the long story of how I went from a broke college kid to books, to baby products, to eventually the freelancer marketplace.
I love that. And as I was listening to your story and your journey, there were two words that came up multiple times that you said, and it was trial and error. You know, and a lot of times in this journey of being an entrepreneur, being a CEO, whatever it is, an executive, we think that it's all going to be, you know, roses and sunshine. Like, yay, look, I started a business and I'm making money and everything's going to be cool. Well, that leads to 20-hour days. That leads to burnout. That leads to trying to hire, which, hey, by the way, nice job on your first hire.
Right. Thank you.
But the rest of it you made up on, right? Which is trying to find somebody that can do logos. Well, then I got to search through all these people and then guess and hope and pray and cross my fingers that it's the right one, or trying to find somebody to write my emails, or trying to find somebody to take care of my phone calls and stuff. And it's such a difficult thing. And you know, just like I do, so many hundreds of entrepreneurs who struggle with this every single day. Listen, if right now you aren't virtually hiring, you're behind the curve. In other words, the world is changing. Let me say that again. The world is changing. But what I want you to see is there's a process that goes with being a business person. But there's one thing that never changes, and that's trial and error. When Nathan first started, what was it? It was, hey, I'm going to figure out what works. Textbooks works. Boom, that takes off. And then what? And then he goes through the trial and error of figuring out the next phase, because otherwise the big bad bookstore is going to eat him alive, right? And he stumbles across baby products. Boom, that takes off. And then what happens? He's too busy. He needs to hire somebody, and he goes through those struggles. And even now, I'm sure if we continue to talk about it, he would talk about the struggles that he faces today. So understand that trial and error is part of being a business person. Like, it's not ever going to go away. What is going to change is how it is that you approach this. So let me ask you that, Nathan. How is it that you approach trial and error now in your business?
I'm a trial and error guy. I mean, I've always been the type of person that I want to figure it out for myself, whether that's right or wrong. And I'm always in that mentality that there's so many gurus, right? There's so many great entrepreneurs. But if I consider myself an above average entrepreneur and I go and I tell someone exactly how I built FreeUp, how I built this Amazon business, everything that's worked for me, how much of that really applies to what they're doing? I mean, they could take pieces of it. They might learn a thing here and there, but they still have to take it and apply it to their business and see if it works. So for me, I love low risk, high reward situations. I like throwing small things against the wall, and whatever works, I do more of it, and I put more time, put more money, put more energy into it. And whatever doesn't work, I pull back and maybe I revisit it later, or I try it again a different way. So that's kind of been my mentality. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right way to go about it, but that's definitely what's worked for me over the past 10 years.
And I love that you said that, because really, unfortunately, what we find today is there's people like, Gary Vee and people like Tony Robbins, and there's people, these gurus that are out there, Grant Cardone, they're like, if you do things this way, then you're going to have success. And so we buy into their programs, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but we buy their programs and we go to their courses and we go to their seminars and we do all these things, and then we apply it, buy the book exactly how it says, and we don't have success. And we're like, well, what happened? I followed exactly what you said. Well, it's what you said, Nathan, which is, you have to be able to apply it to what it is that you're doing, to who it is that you are, because that's the variable in all of this. And without having the experience of trial and error and applying it specifically to your business, the odds of you succeeding are slim to none.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I work with a lot of great course owners. I work with a lot of great coaches, and they're awesome for certain types of people. I've never been one to hire a coach or really take courses at all. That's just not my thing. I'd much rather figure it out for myself and try to come up with a different way than what everyone's doing. But there's a time and a place. And for me, it's like, you kind of think of the line of, this is just someone who only does research and takes no action, and this is someone who doesn't do any research and only take action. I'm probably somewhere over here, and I feel like to be successful, you got to be a little bit more on the action side than on the research side, even though that research has a time and a place.
100% agree, because it doesn't matter how much you learn or how much you know, how perfect your plan is. If it's unexecuted, it's worthless.
Exactly. I mean, that's why I think a lot of people get caught up with like their ideas being stolen from freelancers or virtual assistants, and they don't realize that it's not just about the idea. It's about the ability to actually execute it at a high level.
Very true. Very true. So let me ask you, like, what would you think that your biggest lessons were when it comes to some of the failures or setbacks that you've experienced in life?
Yeah. So one of my biggest failures came around year 1.52-ish. And I had hired a few people, but I really wanted this like manager of the day, someone who was in charge that wasn't me. And so I hired someone, and I spent 6 months teaching them to do every single part of the business: customer service, filling orders, repricing, all that stuff. And on the flip side of it, I had all these manufacturers, but I had this one manufacturer who was like 85% of our sales. And I said, you know what? I don't care about the other ones. Let's focus on him. So I get my business to a pretty awesome spot. It's completely on autopilot. We got one manufacturer cranking out orders. We got one person running everything. I'm sleeping better at night. I'm less stressed. And I decide to take my first vacation. So I go to Myrtle Beach, and I'll never go back. On the first day of my vacation, I get 3 phone calls. One from that manager of the day quitting on me. So 6 months of training down the drain. Second, from this manufacturer telling me they no longer wanted to do business with me. So entire revenue stream gone. And then third, just to top it off, a call from my accountant telling me someone had filed a fake tax return in my name, stolen my identity, had taken $40,000 from the government, and I was going to have to deal with that mess when I got home. So I went from this unbelievable high to, I'm this 20, 21-year-old, no one can touch me, I'm an entrepreneur, to let's start this whole thing all over again. And I learned a very valuable lesson about diversifying. And I'm very happy I learned that in year 1 and 2 and not year 5, 6, 7, 8. And when I got back, I said, you know what? Let's start contacting lots of manufacturers. We can't make that mistake again. And we built relationships with over 200 manufacturers. And within 6 months, the business was bigger than it was before. And once it was time to hire again and we had revenue, we said, you know what? No more manager of the day. We're departmentalizing. We're going to hire a team for customer service, a team for pricing, a team for listing. And wouldn't be the last person that quit on me, but the next time that happened, we just plugged them right into that team, and it wasn't that big of a deal. So that was probably my biggest entrepreneurial failure. And I still have memories of that. I still have dreams about that day today.
Wow. Yeah. That's like the trifecta all happening at the same time. I wouldn't blame you. I wouldn't go back either. So it's interesting that you say that, diversify, and it kind of leads to, the next set of questions, which is you experienced this pain of going all in on one person or one thing and then not having a backup, and it burned you, and it took you a while to recover from that. And when we really think about what FreeUp is, it's that process, right? How do you keep yourself from being burned, or if you are being burned or have been burned, quickly transition to the next one? So talk about how and why FreeUp was created.
Yeah, I mean, I really took everything that I liked about the other platforms, because they do a lot of things well, and changed everything that I didn't like. So we get thousands of applicants every week, virtual assistants, freelancers, agencies from all over the world. We vet them, top 1% get in, and then we make them available to people quickly whenever they need them. Instead of browsing, instead of going through a ton of applicants, you click request a freelancer, tell us what you need. We'll send you one person by default pretty fast within a business day, usually much faster. If you're someone that wants to meet 3, 5, 10, whatever that number is, let us know. We're happy to send you that many. Everyone has their own interview process, which is fine. And then on the back end, we have 24/7 support in case you have even the smallest issue. A good example of that is freelancers on our platform have to respond within a business day at all times. So if 2 days go by and you haven't heard from someone, instead of waiting and chasing and wondering, you reach out to our support. We'll contact them. We'll contact their emergency, and we'll see what's going on. And then we've got that no turnover guarantee. If someone quits, we cover replacement costs and get you a new person right away. And rarely happens. Of course, it's real life. It could. And we're there to make sure you're taken care of. On top of the platform and trying to create a good experience, we know that we can get people good freelancers, but if they don't know what to do with those freelancers after the fact, it doesn't do them much good, right? So part of what we do, me coming on podcast, our Facebook group, Outsourcing Masters, is post a lot of good content to get people thinking, to get people to change some of the things that are not working for them. I mean, for example, you heard my story about not diversifying. If someone says, hey, I want to hire a customer service rep for 40 hours a week, my response is, yes, you can do that. No problem. I'll fill that request. But have you thought about hiring 2 people for 20 hours a week and protecting yourself? No one works 365 days a year. They can cover for each other. You don't get pulled back into customer service. So just stuff like that can help people have a better experience long-term, rather than just, okay, I got a good person for this project. What's next?
Right. I love that. Let me ask you, what would be, because I think there's a lot of people that listen to the show that are, we'll call them traditionalists, right? They do business the way business has always been done. And obviously you've been doing this since 2008. I've been doing this just a few years, but the world has changed in the fact that you can hire and find talented people from anywhere, regardless of geography, right? So what would be your biggest advice for somebody who is struggling in this space of finding qualified talent in person or locally, and is looking to transition to the online world?
Yeah, I mean, we live in a pretty incredible time, right? I mean, you can start a business with your laptop and some internet, and with that comes a lot of change and a lot of fast change. So for me, it's about seeing what opportunities do you have? And one of the things you have now is the ability to become flexible with your hiring. I mean, you go back 25 years ago, you had to hire an office. You were limited to the people in your town or the towns around you. You had to hire people full-time and all that. So now you can hire people from all over the world at different price points with no office. You can hire people project-based, part-time, full-time, 2-month project, whatever you actually need for your business. And it can give you a huge competitive advantage over your competitors who are still stuck doing it the old way. So, I mean, my message is there's no one way to grow a business. There are a lot of successful entrepreneurs that don't hire anyone remote. And there's a lot of people that do the hybrid or just remote and all that. But figure out what your business actually needs. Do you actually need that office? Do you actually need to do it the way that's been done for X amount of years? And a lot of times, if you open up your brain to just the way that everything's going, they predict that over the next 10 years, over 50% of the workforce is going to be remote. So you can either fight it or you can go with it. And a lot of times those decisions to go with it will benefit you a lot more long-term.
Beautiful. I love that explanation. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and she basically said, if you're doing a task and it's not paying you, her number was $500 an hour, then you should be hiring it out. So let me ask you that same question. What is that number for you as far as what an entrepreneur or an executive or a CEO, what number should they be thinking at? Hey, I should probably hire this job out.
Yeah, so you got to figure out what your hourly rate is. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur who's been doing it for 4 and 5 years, yeah, maybe your hourly rate is $500 an hour. If you're Bill Gates, your hourly rate is obviously a lot higher than $500 an hour. But if you're a new entrepreneur, you're in the first 6 months of your business, you don't have any revenue stream, you don't have any proof of concept. Guess what? Your time is not worth $500 an hour. You got some work to do before you go ahead and hire people. And you can get a head start if you're investing money strategically, but a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in this time, they need to figure out that proof of concept. They need to get some sales, get some revenue streams, and then it's time to hire. And maybe then you start with the $5 an hour test, the $10 an hour test, and you can build up from there. So I hate to kind of lump everything under one rule, like anything less than $500 an hour you should hire for, because I think that's a dangerous game to play with some smaller entrepreneurs who are getting their feet wet. But the overall concept, I 100% agree with. And one of the things I recommend doing is creating a list of everything that you do on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, and prioritize it from easiest to hardest. Put an hourly rate next to each task based on what you think the market rate is. And then, figure out what your hourly rate is and start chipping away and get rid of those things that are far below your hourly rate, especially things that don't have a direct correlation with ROI and stuff that takes up a lot of your hours every single week. Because what would you do with an extra 5 hours, 10 hours a week? I mean, those are the kinds of things that can help you accelerate your business as an entrepreneur.
I love that. It's beautiful. And that's exactly what we spent a lot of time talking about is, hey, listen, not only do you have to prioritize your tasks, but you have to understand which tasks are bringing me money and which tasks can I, have somebody else do. So last question in the space of we'll call it digital hiring or online hiring. What for people who are thinking about getting into this space, they're one of their obvious questions is, how much does it cost? Because if you think about the cost associated with hiring somebody in person, depending on how large your company is, right? You got to worry about the hourly rate. You got to worry about any type of additional compensation, about a performance plan. You got to worry about I just blanked on the word, health benefits, so on and so forth. Let's just say for a virtual assistant, somebody's just looking for somebody for 20 hours a week to, answer emails or answer phone calls or different things like that. What's the price difference between those two?
So that's probably in that $5 to $10 an hour range. But what I like to do is break it down into 3 levels. You got the followers, you got the doers, and you got the experts. So the followers, think $5 to $10 an hour, non-US. Virtual assistant can mean a lot of different things, but a lot of times when people say virtual assistant, they're talking about those followers, and they're going to have years of experience if you get them on FreeUp, because we're not a marketplace for newbies. But at the same time, they're only as good as your systems, your process. If you don't have those in place, you're going to struggle to hire those followers. Then you got the specialists, the graphic designers, bookkeepers, writers. You're not teaching a graphic designer how to be a graphic designer, but they're not consulting with you either. They're doers. They're in that 10 to 30, 10 to 35 range, could be US or non-US. And then you got the experts, the 25 and up, the high-level freelancers, consultants, agencies that we have, that they have their own systems, their own processes. They're bringing their own expertise to the table. They can audit your business. They can execute high-level game plans. They can project manage. And what you have to do as an entrepreneur is say, hey, am I someone who's stuck inside the day-to-day of my operation? So I need those followers. Am I someone where these projects are building up that are outside of my core competency that I need to chip away at? Or am I someone taking on something new? And maybe I'm taking on Facebook ads, and I could spend the next 6 months being a Facebook ad expert, but that's probably not a great use of my time. And I can't do that with every single part of my business. So I have to figure out, what am I the best at? Where should I be focusing my time? And instead of hiring a follower that I have to build the systems for, let's hire someone who just hit the ground running right from the beginning. So that's how I like to break it down. And obviously those are real people. They don't always fit into perfect levels, but it kind of gives you a good ballpark of what you should be looking for.
That's a great explanation. And a lot of people don't understand that. In fact, when I first started, I didn't understand that either. I started with this podcast and I was like, oh, cool, I'll start with the podcast. And I quickly got overwhelmed, as you know, with all the different behind the scene things that need to happen. And so I immediately tried to hire somebody, not understanding exactly who it was that I needed, and finally what I realized is I need that higher level, that agency type person to where I hit record. When I'm done, I send it over and my hands are clean. Like it gets posted where it needs to get posted. It gets transcribed. I get everything taken care of. So what Nathan is saying is very important, is understand the type of person that you need first, so that when you're out looking, you know what you're looking for. So I want to kind of tie this all together. What is for you, the best piece of advice that someone has given you over the years?
Just to treat people well. So to go back, my internships that I had before college, the one that I worked at the longest was Firestone. And I had this manager who was, I guess, a good manager number-wise because his store did well, but he was a terrible manager in terms of culture, in terms of people liking working for him. He would stress people out. He would stress me out. He would look over my shoulder every single day. But when I got to be an entrepreneur and hiring people for the first time, that's the only manager I'd ever had. So that was the type of manager that I became. And I had crazy turnover. People hated working for me. And it took my business partner, Connor, to kind of call me out and say, hey, we can't keep playing this like bad cop, good cop thing where everyone likes him and everyone hates me. And I had to change my approach, just how I would talk to people. And it's as small as how I sent an email out, or how I would talk to people at meetings, or how we would do one-on-ones, or any of that. And it took that big change. And it wasn't I woke up one day and I was an instantly like nice person that everyone liked. It took a lot of mental changes over time and a lot of hard work. So that was probably the biggest piece of advice, because I mean, at the end of the day, my internal team on FreeUp bills me 1,200 hours a week. I couldn't work that many hours a week if I wanted to. And if they didn't like working with me and like working with the company, there is no FreeUp, no matter how hard I work. So that's definitely been the difference maker for me.
All right. Beautiful. Thank you for that. Now, listen, I want to kind of tie this up for you guys. I want you to understand a couple things. You got a boatload of information here, so I would highly recommend going back and listening to this again. But to understand the overall theme here, which is the foundation, how it is you treat people will guarantee whether they stick around or not. But two, you have to be able to open your eyes and say, am I making the best use of my time? We talk a lot about time management here internally, but you also have to start looking externally, right? Which is around you and around your business. So make sure that you're using your time most appropriately. Now, I will plug him again because it's an amazing service. Freeup.com, FREEEUP.com. Talk to Nathan. Reach out to him on LinkedIn. He will respond to your messages. But if you have any questions about anything like virtual assistants or freelancers or agencies in any of this online space and how they could be beneficial to you, highly recommend them or highly recommend you reaching out to Nathan. Anywhere else that they can contact you?
Yeah, right at the top of freeup.com is my calendar, my assistant's calendar. If you want to meet with them, you go join our Facebook group, Outsourcing Masters. We post a lot of great content to help people hire better. I'm pretty active on Twitter and Instagram, Real Nate Hirsch. You mentioned LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to contact. So feel free to reach out. And if you do create a client account on FreeUp, mention this podcast, get a $25 credit to try us out.
There you go. Now you guys just got incentive, and I would recommend taking advantage of that. Nathan, again, I thank you for being here. I thank you for sharing your story, your expertise. And again, if you guys are struggling in any of this space of what do I do with all of these things that need to get done, odds are you should probably hire somebody. And I would recommend looking at freeup.com. They will probably be cheaper and more qualified than anybody you're going to find on Craigslist or Facebook. Any last words, parting words, Nathan?
No, I really appreciate you having me, and have a great rest of the week. And thanks for listening, everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys. Remember, it's always easier to stay ready than it is to get ready. And it's about winning this daily war. You can quickly get overwhelmed with the things that have to happen day in and day out. But if you take the time, like we talked about, to prep yourself and make sure that you know exactly what needs to happen and when it needs to happen, odds are you're going to win. If you're struggling with employees, if you're struggling with too much to do and too little time, here is a viable option for you. And I would highly recommend doing it. Remember, stay safe, stay focused, and we'll see you on the next one.